those are the people that we want to protect from spreading. And it's those 20% that are going to need to have more outreach into the health system. So there are simple things that we can do as the 80% carriers, or as the 20% that need to be protected, that are just core foundational public health principles in order to reduce that risk for disease. Okay, so how does this stuff travel? Well, we're figuring that out. News comes out every day, but it's fair to say that it's in droplets. And when we say infected colleagues, we're talking about people that may be asymptomatic or symptomatic. And that's why the social distancing has occurred, because you may not know you have COVID, just like you may not know you have the flu until it sets in. And then unfortunately, COVID may sit around on surfaces, which is why hand washing is critical. But at the same time, it may sit around on surfaces for a long time, which is why schools have shut down as well. Okay, so it's simple not to spread this. The 6-foot rule. Soap and water are your heroes. Make sure to scrub those fingernails. Barriers. So you go out into society, you need toilet paper, as we see on the news, or you are interacting with bus drivers or workers, especially cashiers and people that hold those jobs where, in order to continue to bring in income and continue to run our infrastructure, they are not going to be able to hold that 6-foot rule. And so that's where social distancing, the 6-foot rule doesn't apply. They may not be able to wash their hands all the time or use sanitizers, especially if you're doing transit on a bus. And so that's where gloves and masks or barriers, however they may be, become important. And when I speak about barriers, I'm not talking necessarily about the N95 respirators or the disposables that come and are in short supply for medical professionals. I'm literally talking about gloves that you can get that you use around the house, maybe to do the dishes, that fit nice, or some type of barrier that you can put over your face and take up and down. They exist online. There's resources out there how to make them. Also, you can use a handkerchief. And when you're within that 6-foot proximity, you can just pull the handkerchief up. So let's do it. And let's embrace it. This is how we protect our community. This is how we keep each other safe. This is how we make sure those newborns are going to be healthy, because they're the generation that's going to keep our generation alive and going when they hit adulthood. So there are places where you can get reliable information. And also there are things out there you can do to protect your family, even if you're not able to do that 6-foot rule in your workplace or out in society. There are things that you can do as barriers and become informed on basic public health principles. There's nothing extraordinary that you need to do or be worried about doing. We can just keep the risk down.
Hi, Lorelei.
Hello.
Hi, hello, everyone. My name is Evelyn, and I am one of the avatar hosts here at Mursion. So I understand that we've created a scenario to just give an example to our guest of how they might be able to handle having a conversation with someone who's undergoing these stresses around the house. Is that correct?
Yes.
Excellent. And my understanding is you are going to volunteer to be in the hot seat and have this conversation. This is a brand new scenario that we're trying out. So we're just going to bring that slide up, read it through, and give it a go. All right? So let's review. This is a performance coaching scenario, managing the stress response of others. For today, you're going to have a conversation with Lee, who has suddenly found himself working from home. Lee is generally effective. He is smart, dedicated, and passionate about his work, but his performance has started slipping since he started working from home. Your desired outcome is to understand the situation and get Lee's agreement on a plan moving forward. Without judgment, invite Lee into a conversation about his recent performance. Explain the rationale for social, physical distancing and working from home, and help Lee discover a sense of control over the situation. I'll give you a moment to look at that and let me know when you're ready. Are you ready to move on?
Ready on this end.
Great. Then in just a moment, you will see Lee, and he can see and hear you just as if he were sitting on a Zoom call with you on his laptop and speaking to you over the phone, because as we all know, most of us are having to call in using our phones half the time. So this is going to be very realistic for our current situation. Feel free to say pause or end simulation at any time, and then I will come back for just a few moments of reflection.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Oh, hey, Lorelei.
Lee, how are you doing?
Hey, well, wow. I guess as good as can be expected. It's so crazy right now, and it's just hard to focus and get things done.
Yeah, this is unprecedented for anything that I've seen in my lifetime, and probably my parents, and hopefully my child. I'm checking in with people, especially people that are fantastic performers, that are highly functional, and maybe kind of slipping at this moment in time for work, because it might be indicative that there might be a lot of stress going on. And I wanted to reach out and help. So is there something that is really just keeping you from being able to focus on work?
Um, well, to your point, Lorelei, yeah, I realize that, I haven't really been hitting those deadlines as well as I usually am, but it's just been, it's so frustrating, and I'm not sure how to compartmentalize and focus and take care of everything else. The kids are running around. My mother-in-law is here with us, and she's at risk with all of this going on, and it's just really been weighing heavily on my mind.
Yeah, that's pretty chaotic here too. The whole environment has changed in our house. So it's uncontrollable when I'm going to get disrupted by the kids. It's not predictable. And it does feel really threatening trying to figure out how to navigate my world and my health and then that of the family around me. I've found some things.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I have to go out sometimes, and people are hoarding toilet paper, but I have 6 people in the house. I have to go out and get it. And then what do I do about going out? But then I'm coming back to my mother-in-law and my kids. It's just a lot.
Yeah, it sounds much like I started this whole process that you're just kind of fully in a stress response. It's hard to think, it's hard to focus, it's hard to know what to do where, and it's just an inundation of daily updates, hour by hour, even on the phone. So there's things and tools that I've found that have really helped me take a sense of control for my family, to make it more predictable and less threatening. And they're pretty simple to do. And that kind of helps me check into work as a place where I know I've got this and the expectations. And then when I check out of work, I know that when I walk into those stores, my threat and my risk are lower, and then it's more controllable in my house how this disease spreads. Is that something that I could share with you that might help you kind of do the same?
I'm definitely happy to hear any suggestions you have, of course.
Yeah, the social distancing, again, pretty chaotic. But what I've found is it's really nice not coming into large group settings and then wondering if, I'm going to be affected, if other people are symptomatic, but we don't know it. And there are so many times when I need to go out and get the toilet paper, or I need to run and do an errand, especially because I have a child at home and I also have a husband who's immunocompromised. And so I was kind of in that same spot you were, Lee, but I did some research and I found that I can reduce my risk when I go into those situations, and especially reduce the risk of the person I'm interacting with, like the cashier, who might have a family member that also is in our spot, right? And so what I've found is that I wear gloves, and then that way, if I touch stuff, I can just wash the gloves off. If I don't have gloves, I can make sure to really scrub with those fingernails and use that in any way I can, and just remind myself not to touch my face and my children. Also, I like wearing a mask, especially masks that you can breathe through and that are reusable, so that you only need one, so that we can save those ones that are specifically made for healthcare providers, or they're specifically made for certain professions out there and available for them. And if you can't find a mask,
Lorelei, can
yeah,
I ask a question?
please.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, like those gloves, are those healthcare worker gloves? Because I don't have access to that.
Well, you can put on your snow gloves depending on where you live. You can also just wash your hands and sanitize a lot if you have access to that. You can keep an eye on Amazon. You can look around for work gloves. So it doesn't have to be medical gloves when you go out into the community. It could really be just any kind of barrier. And same thing when people talk about masks. We're really just talking about a barrier. So maybe that's a handkerchief that you pull off. You pull up when you're kind of working around that 6-foot rule. Maybe it is a reusable or a reusable washable mask, so that you don't have to worry about as much environmental impact. But we're just talking about barriers here. So you can get creative, your kids can get creative, and then your risk goes down. And you also have a sense of protection and control, that that you have that extra layer of protection. And for me, that makes me feel good when I go out in public. I don't feel exposed. I feel covered.
Wow, I thought that we had to go out and get those expensive masks that they say you have to have fitted or they don't work, or that I had to have some kind of special gloves. But it sounds like you're telling me that we could make our own barriers and feel a little more safe, and that is a little more calming. But to your point too, we just get so much hype from the media, and then I'm constantly inundated with this and trying to work at the same time.
Well, Lee, here's what I would tell you. You have a lot of control in your work. You're an excellent performer, and all the stuff from the media is going to be the same when you start your day as when you end your day. So what I do is I check into work, and that's my place of control. That's the place I have to just let that stress response down. And then when I walk out into the community to get that stuff I need, or I interact with my child or my husband, then I have the control of knowing I'm reducing the threat. And so I'd say, treat your workspace as the space that you can just rock it and continue to do your job, and then check back into the world, find out what the update is whenever you're not in that space. And there's resources out there so that you can continue any practice that you have, whether it be spiritual or communal. All that stuff's online now. So try and just zone into work as a place that's a space for you.
That those are some really great suggestions, Lorelei. Thank you. I appreciate your time, and you've really given me a lot to think about, and I'm gonna get with the kids and see if maybe they can help create some masks per se out of some bandanas or something. And it's just a lot of great information. So thank you, and some good advice of setting aside some time, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. I guess I really need to just get back to work.
Ailey, I'm thinking about you and all of our colleagues. We're going to get through this. We're a community and we're strong. So let's just stay in touch, okay?
Great. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Lorelei, you managed a very difficult conversation in a very smooth and effective way. So at this time, this is where we as hosts tend to do a little feedback and reflection. Let's go ahead and take a moment for that now. Looking back at that conversation, what's something that you did that went very well?
From my perspective,
Yes.
I really try in any conversation to let people get that stress response out and verbalize and name it and name in discourse exactly what they're worried about. And then remind people with that appraisal system those resources they have again and again, so that whenever they leave that conversation and they talk to other people, they remember those resources and then they can take action, and then they cannot have as many stress responses. And that's the ultimate goal, is to take down the stress responses that happen internally.
Absolutely. Looking back, is there anything that you can think of immediately that you might do differently next time?
There's always stuff to be done differently because each individual has individual issues, and some really want to talk more and have that support, and some people really just want some information and step back. And so I think in that conversation specifically, there was probably a little more time for Lee to really talk about his concerns, while at the same time making sure that he can stay focused on just those three things. So I wish, in continuing to iterate this, that coming back to those three things is a sense of power, and that power is his. And also that self-care, oddly in this time, is work, oddly. So reminding people that self-care is that control, I think I would change my language just a little bit more around that discourse.
I think that that is an excellent self-observation. You did an amazing job as the most minute of observations, I would say, when you were sharing all of the aspects of what he can do. Once we started talking about the mask and the barrier, and you started to move into something else, and he actually sort of interrupted you and said, wait, I have a question. I think sometimes when it's a subject people aren't familiar with, it's always helpful to kind of check in with them once you've laid out some information and say, hey, does that make sense? Because then that opens the door for them to say, yeah, and you're ready to move on, or no, I have more questions, or just gives them that moment to just dissect and understand and just process. So just making certain that you give them that space to process all the information that you're putting out there.
That's tremendously helpful.
Great. Well, that's what we're here for. Thank you so much, Lorelei, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm going to turn you back over to Christina.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. That was, and thank you, Lorelei. That was incredibly insightful and comforting. I love that message of calm and focus and control. It's applicable not only to our current crisis and what we've been going through in the last few weeks, but also any situation involving chaos and stress. So I'm getting a few questions in private chat about how exactly the technology works. So I just wanted to address that quickly. So all the visuals that you saw in the simulation just now were controlled by AI, artificial intelligence, which reduces the cognitive load on the simulation specialist or the live human operator behind the scenes, who can then parachute into different characters and different environments at ease. So this human in the loop approach, it produces simulations that are not only authentic and spontaneous, but are also targeted, flexible, and seamless for organizations and for companies to administer. So the reason that we use the avatars is because it makes learners feel safe, allowing them to make mistakes, and it frees them to find their voice. And all this has been backed by research. If you're interested, please just ping me afterwards. But this avatar approach also allows organizations to scale these simulations across a large population, however distributed, and this produces mindset shift and behavioral change. So to summarize, it's anyone can take a multiple choice or complete a point and click exercise, but it's immersive practice that can truly produce and test mastery. So this is how we bring together the best of the human-driven and the tech-driven to produce practice that is not only real and empathic, but also cost-effective and scalable for organizations. And this concludes the presentation for today. For anyone who's interested in exactly how to put this to work and make this a reality, we have Dr. Carrie Straub with us today to talk about exactly how we can make this a reality fast and go virtual. I also want, if you enjoyed this conversation, we are hosting a series of virtual roundtables next week. We'll be continuing to workshop this scenario. And we also have a series of diversity and inclusion presentations beginning on Tuesday with Inclusion Ventures. We'll be doing our very popular rapid scenario design workshop focusing specifically on microaggressions. So if you enjoyed the conversation today about managing fight or flight responses and the stress of yourself and others, we'll be applying this in a D&I context talking about de-escalating microaggressions. So if you've heard any of these things at work and these messages here, and you want to know how to intervene and how to say and do the right thing, be sure to join us for that presentation. And then on Thursday, we also have another presentation from Angela Nino of Empathic Workplace, and she will be talking about navigating the new norm and transitioning to remote work. So be sure to join us for those two special events. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Carrie Straub.
Thanks, Christina. Thanks so much, Dr. Walker, too. It was really neat to hear you artfully have that discussion and kind of de-stressly. So what we thought might be interesting for you all, if you've come into this webinar to learn a little bit more about the topic, is just to share how other organizations are using this. There are a lot of leading companies that are using these virtual simulations to go in and train their workforce. And what we're starting to hear more and more, and I imagine all of you are probably working remotely from home, and you can reply in the chat if you are right now. Everybody is doing this kind of self-quarantining or staying social distancing, as Dr. Walker said. And what companies are reaching out to us for is like, how do we manage this quickly at scale? And how do we help our workforce with these they're really hard to train or hard to work with online type of topics. So we've developed a series of off-the-shelf scenarios that people can kind of quickly start and start using right away. We've organized them around leadership skills, wellness, which is an example of the one that you just saw now, and career skills. So if people are interested, if you have any questions, you're welcome to put them into the chat and I'll keep it, or if Lorelei, or I'm sorry, if Christina or Anna,
yeah, I'll volunteer to do that.
See any, are there any questions coming in? And I'm happy to pause for a second. We also, I'm happy to share what organizations, what leading organizations are doing this. So here you see this example. These are some samples of the quick start topics that we have. So organizations are purchasing they're purchasing one package, which entitles them to 3 30-minute scenarios. So if you look across any of these titles, like the one that we just saw public safety and health conversations. So under the wellness category, the second bullet down. So including a COVID-19 pandemic scenario. That's something that we're definitely able to, as you can see, respond pretty quickly to what's happening based on the way that our technology works. We can spin up new content that way. So what companies are doing is they're saying, all right, I have a crew of employees, they're all working remotely. We're needing to focus on wellness. We're needing to focus on leadership skills and how to influence people working remotely even. And so what they'll do is they'll purchase a package of 3 of these scenarios, and they can mix and match, kind of like building blocks, so that the employee can say, all right, these are the 3 that are really pressing for me. And as to Dr. Walker's point, that are going to give me a little bit more control and control over my environment and kind of decrease my stress. So it would be interesting to hear from all of you, like which of these topics, if you could go back one, thanks. Which of these topics here are the most engaging to you, just by looking at the titles. We'd love to do a quick kind of mini poll. So just take a minute to type that in. Oh, Joanne, transition to remote work. Yes, we're hearing that one a lot. What are some of managing up? Interoffice conflict, facilitating difficult conversations. Oh, about how long this will, like managing uncertainty. Yeah, what is missing from this list? What are some things that are, these are the difficult conversations that people are having remotely. What are some things that are missing from our list that you all would be interested in seeing? Influencing without authority, managing up.
Setting expectations, I see.
I always hear it is a marathon with mileposts. It's a marathon, not a sprint right now that we're in, right? Dr. Walker, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so it's important to set those milestones. So one of the things that's really interesting about the way that the technology works, because it's a combination change management. Yes, that's a huge right now, big change management. Because of the fact that it's a combination of artificial intelligence and a live person, we can spin up content very quickly. The technology is agile and lightweight. We can definitely respond to some of these. So we're going to collect all of this data, and you might be seeing coming out, you might be starting to see how some of these topics might appear in our other webinars. So thank you so much for taking a minute to tell us what you think. In terms of our technology, does anybody have any questions about how the technology works? I know we had a chance to talk about that a little bit at the top of the hour, but.
Just to let you know, in the chat, it says, interesting to see how it would help prepare for certification interviews, which is definitely something we've utilized.
Yeah.
We've been utilized for in the past.
Yeah. So it'd be
or enable the people who be part of the panel. Yes, we've done that as well.
Joanne's asking if people ever resist to seeing these animated type characters and having to suspend disbelief. This is your area of research, Carrie.
Yeah, so Katrina, that is a question I asked myself when I first started doing this work. I was like, what is with these avatar? You know, if you're going to practice a role play situation, why not just use real humans, right? And one of the benefits of doing it, actually, the research indicates. So there's a study that was done at Stanford University by Jeremy Balanson, and he is on our advisory board. And what he did was he compared 3 conditions of human communication. So he had one condition where people were talking on a telephone, another condition where people were on a video conference, like we're doing right now, and then another condition where he was having people communicate via avatars. And they were more rudimentary than ours, but they were these digital characters. And what he found, Joanne, was that if you talk through avatars, you actually communicate significantly more verbal and nonverbal behavior than you do in the other 2 conditions, so telephone and video conference. And the fascinating fact, and so he found that people were actually communicating more with these avatars. They also asked the participants, who did you find more likable? Like how likable did you find this avatar or person that you were communicating with? And how did you find them to be trustworthy? And they found that the people that were communicating with the avatars rated them as significantly more trustworthy and significantly more likable. So there's research coming out of these VR pockets where they're saying, like, there's something about communicating via avatars that gives people this sense of privacy and anonymity. I don't know, do we have time to offer up an option for somebody to talk to one of the avatars? Is that a capability that we have or not?
We can certainly stay on and do that if you would like. And Katrina was actually asking about multiple avatars, which in this particular setting, we don't have lined up because obviously this is a demonstration of someone working from home, which is a whole different
Social
situation,
distancing.
which is part of the conversation we'll be having with Angela and Nino on Thursday, is about working from home with all of those multiple people in the house, with your kids and your spouse and your roommates. But this particular setting only shows the one. But we do have the ability to have up to 4 adult avatars in an environment in an office setting at once. So I actually, Katrina, I sent you my email. If you want to hop on, I can even get you on to show you that. And the question was, can you do this in VR goggles as well? Carrie, you want to take that?
Yeah, so we're starting to prototype now. In this day and age, people are kind of putting a pause on VR goggles right now, but definitely we have these simulations that can be done in full VR. As equipment costs come down, it's interesting. 100% of our customers are interested in VR, but 100% of them are actually using the 2D because they already have that equipment. And so we're finding that VR is really, really exciting, but at the same time, we don't know that there's that return on investment that you get by investing in the equipment. So it is all very fascinating. The issue with the avatars, like something to think about, the research indicates that people are more comfortable. And the reason for that, it's counterintuitive because you're talking to an avatar. You'd think you'd be more comfortable with a human, but it definitely puts this sense of privacy and anonymity and gives you a little bit of psychological safety, so that if you compare it with other types of social skills training, and actually if we could go back to that slide with the grid on it, we can look at, these are the other ways that people get social skills training. So when you do a role play with a person, you have another person there in front of you, or when you get coaching, you have a relationship with that coach. So these human-centric ways on the left side of this grid, you don't get that sense of psychological safety because you have the relationship with the other person. And a lot of times people are like, oh, well, they're judging me, or they're being particularly hard on me. When you have the avatars there, it creates kind of a digital veil and allows people to just focus internally on their own performance and not think about what the other person is doing.
It's interesting. I actually noticed that Lorelei said she found it actually easier or somewhat comforting to speak to that avatar, particularly in that practice setting. That's the whole reasoning behind it.
So if we could go to that quick
point,
start. Oh, could we go back to that quick start slide? Really, it's right before, yeah, one more. So if people are interested, what a lot of companies are reaching out to us now, we've talked about all the different scenarios that, upskilling your workforce to work remotely, influencing upward, all of those things when people are working remotely. So people are turning to us now and they're using scenarios like the one that you just saw about COVID-19, but they're creating these packages. So if people are interested, please let us know that, and we can reach out to you and kind of share what that turnkey solution might look like. It's very off the shelf, but at the same time, it's so much more powerful than watching a video or reading some content or doing a click-through webinar. Imagine if Dr. Walker would do this 4 times in a row. The research indicates that we can drive change, behavior change, and we can have her significantly outperform other people that are just getting content in the other ways that we're used to, whether it's watching a video or reading content that way. So, and people find it to be fun. If we have time to let somebody else open up, that might be an option or not. Christina, if you have other thoughts for what we should do with the rest of our time.
Yeah, is there any? Yeah, I think that'd be great if anyone's interested in taking a turn through either that scenario or another one.
Would somebody be up for having a discussion with Lee and helping him kind of get some balance back into his life? One of our attendees. It's fun. We promise he won't bite.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, this is Anna here, and I was going to say we have a scenario as well where someone said managing remote workforce transitions, and that's another scenario that we could also share, which we've done on earlier this week, and we decided to move to wellness, but we have one where it's, how do you have that conversation about remote workforce transitions, and how can we provide strategies and create support around that. If anyone's interested in seeing something like that, that's an option that we can share as well. It's in the same environment, just a different avatar. We have probably a couple dozen in our bank from age 5 to 70, so we have a variety of avatars to suit any of the contexts, whether it be related to communicating with children on how tough of a time this is and having them try to understand what's going on. Oh, Joanne.
Okay, Joanne. Yeah, I was hoping you would do it, Joanne, because I knew you had questions.
I'm going to promote you to a panelist, Joanne, and then once you're
Oops, I'm sorry, I meant to
webinar
put that on
is,
too.
or once your audio is set up, just say hello and we can add you and get you started. Hello?
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. We hear you. Are you able to turn on your webcam by chance? Because we do.
Yeah, just wait a moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll be fine. And I don't think we mentioned this before. We use a webcam on the learner for those nonverbal communications. We know that in a lot of instances that it's not just what you say, but how you say it. So our simulation specialists are also looking for those nonverbal cues during those discussions. And it's something that's part of the assessment, and learners can also review and watch recordings of themselves and see how they respond and when they may not realize how they're reacting to something. But Joanne, if you're having issues with the webcam, it's not a problem today. We're just giving you a chance to see what the experience is like and get a feel for that, of what it's like chatting with an avatar and practicing some skills.
Sure. It's
Hi, Joanne.
hi. Oh wait, let me see.
There you are. We see you.
Oh, I can't even see.
See you, Joanne.
Hi. I can't usually with okay. I can't see that it's working, but
There. We can see you. And hello, I'm Evelyn. Nice to meet you, Joanne. Thank you so much for jumping in and trying this out today. We certainly don't expect you to be an expert in all of the health responses that Lorelei was talking about, but if you'd like to try that scenario, you are welcome to, or I can line it up where you're just simply speaking to an avatar who's working from home and just facing the challenges of being in the middle of chaos.
Sure. I guess
I'm just, how about he's working from home either way, and I'll let you share what you want to share with him. How's that?
Yeah, sure. So just speak about the experience. Like I'm the employee who's concerned and sharing this with, I guess, a supervisor or like someone who's representing the company.
I would say let's have you, it could be a teammate or someone who works for you who maybe is having trouble meeting those goals, setting those deadlines, focusing in, and much like where Lee is coming from, but you don't have to have the expertise that Lorelei did. Just practice having that conversation and de-escalating that fear.
Sure. Okay. Well, would the avatars or like the person, I guess this would be a person. What would the name be?
We can still, how about, I tell you what, you can still have a conversation with Lee, and then it's somewhat familiar.
Okay, sure.
So I'll let you have a conversation with Lee. We'll give him the same scenario that he's distracted. He's slipped a little at his numbers and meeting his goals because we've suddenly jumped into this strange and new environment of working from home. And he's a little scared and concerned and having trouble focusing. And you can just maybe help him figure out how to take a step back and breathe and figure out how to manage that. Some strategies might be just listening to his concerns, acknowledging the situation, understanding that he can't change it, but we've got to work together to figure out how to navigate this. Perhaps it's setting certain times aside, not having to work 9 to 5, but actually being able to take some time midday, trade out that time with the spouse to hang with the kids and give him an opportunity to do that work at a later time, to delay that if he needs to, or simply to not feel so scared about going out in public. being able to use those precautions, excuse me, that Lorelei mentioned in terms of making sure you have your mask and sneeze into your elbow and those sorts of things.
Sure. Okay.
So
Sure.
this is just for fun. And so nobody's judging and there is no right or wrong.
Right. Right. Hey.
All right. Do you have any other questions?
No, it'll be interesting, I'm sure.
You're being very brave and jumping in. So let's just give it a try.
Sure. Lee.
Oh,
Hi.
oh, hey, Joanne.
Oh, hi. Hi. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you well. Okay. So,
Great, yeah, sorry I have to use the phone. The audio just doesn't connect well these days.
oh no, I totally understand. And whatever way you can connect is great for us. I can hear you clearly, so that's I just wanted to check in with you. How has it been over the last week?
Honestly, Joanne, it's been a little bit of a circus, I'm home, the kids are here, the wife is here, the mother-in-law is here, and we're all just trying to navigate this space together. And I know that I haven't met some of the deadlines as quickly as I usually do, and things have slipped a little, and I'm really sorry, but I'm trying here.
No, I mean well, it's definitely been a really trying time. This has certainly been an experience that really none of us have ever had before. So it's definitely understanding that things are overwhelming for a lot of us. And yeah, no, I definitely check in. It's not right now. There's definitely been a transition. We're all remote, and I've just wanted to make sure that I with people to see how that transition's been going. It certainly has. I mean, as far as falling behind in deadlines, did you? What have you felt about the situation that has been leading to that?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, it's just really hard for me to focus, even when Sue Ann takes the kids and gives me that time. I'm so distracted by the fact that, I need to get out of the house. I need to get supplies, but then I'm bringing that back. And how long do I need to wait to interact with anybody once I'm back? And the news is constantly updating and there's changes. And I feel like I need to stay on top of that, but I'm constantly swapping tasks, and it's just taking me longer to get anything done.
Right. Yeah, no, there's definitely a difference in structure throughout the day that's been going on. I know it's hard especially since we are all trying to figure out what's going on, and to kind of keep glued to the news. I have to say, last week, even for myself, it was I was definitely looking very regularly. One thing I was going to ask is if you thought of ways that you could figure out what you need to get done in your own personal life, like your priorities. You've mentioned your family, spending time with your spouse, with your children, and then seeing if you can create pockets where you can compartmentalize, like keeping up to date on the news and doing a quick run to get some supplies, but just trying to find ways to carve out times you meet your priorities and also leave pockets to find out what's going on.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting, Joanne. I think the way you're saying to sort of make pockets, I guess it'd be almost like blocks of time. So maybe I can set blocks of time that, you know, I say, okay, I've got to, this is going to be my work time. You're going to have to, everybody needs to leave me alone. I'm just going to have to do this, but then have those blocks of times where I get to say, now I'm stepping away from work. I'm here for you. Let's have some family time, so that I'm not swapping back and forth or trying to do it all at once. That's a great idea.
Exactly. It's kind of creating structures for all the structures so that you can respond to uncertainties that are genuinely happening, but also making sure that you're able to compartmentalize so that you can care what's essential. And things like your family, things like your work are essential. You don't want to have to have more than one thing kind of competing for your attention at the same time. But no, it's, I mean, I can, what I do here is that you're really dedicated to your work. You're really dedicated to your family and to your responsibilities. What I've heard also is as far as work productivity, it helps to have, I've heard 1.5 hour pockets or even 1 3-hour pocket to just really dive in. And that sort of leaves enough time also so that whatever news comes before or after, you still are able to kind of tune into whatever updates are going on.
Wow, you were doing a fantastic job. In the interest of time, I went ahead and jumped back in, but I love the idea of suggesting 1.5 to 3-hour pockets so that even if there's changing news, you set a time to check in with that, but leave it, you know, you've set yourself in blocks of time. So I know that was jumping in with no prep. Very quickly, why don't you share with us how that felt to talk to an avatar?
You know, what's interesting is it was consistent with what you were saying. You would think that it would, like, the reason I asked the question earlier about speaking to an animated figure is I was wondering if that would feel hokey, but it was actually a lot more, I agree. There was a safety to actually speaking to what appeared to be a character.
We find the audio is the most important if the audio and the conversation feels natural.
Right.
And yeah, I'm so glad you jumped in to do it. I always want.
Great, I'm going to turn you back over.
But I always am excited for people that are like questioning it a little bit to give it a try, because it definitely feels different when you do it rather than when you talk about it or when you see it. So
Absolutely.
that's great. It's what it's doing is it's firing up those same neural connections in your brain when you have a conversation with a real person. And so what happens is, instead of watching a video about it, or which is not firing up those same neural connections, then when you go out into the world, you've now practiced that. You've done your tennis swing or whatever, your golf swing that many times. And so when the time comes and you really need to do it, you've got those connections made. So fascinating work. Thanks for jumping in, Joanne.
Of course. No, thank you.
So Christina, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. Yeah, so we, well, I want to make sure that we're covering any questions that people have about pricing, about implementation.
We can go back to that, the slide after the quick start slide that has all of the different scenarios of people. That way people can just look at it one last time and see if they have any questions. And Christina, you've shared our contact information here if people want to reach out to us.
I know it's daunting to try the simulation out in front of a group. So if you would like a private demo or a demo for your team or your workforce, don't hesitate to reach out to either Carrie or I, or request a demo on the site. We also have a live chat representative who can answer your questions in real time. And you know, we can demo either that scenario today, or we could try one of the ones here in leadership, wellness, or in career skills. And also really interested in hearing either an email, the chat, what else you're interested in seeing. Look forward to partnering with you and making this a reality for your workforce. And of course, if there are any last questions for Lorelei as well, we still have her on. Great.
I think we're coming to the top of our time, so we could probably let people have 2 minutes of their life back. How does that sound?
Great.
Thanks
Thank you so much,
for
Carrie,
joining.
and thank you, Lorelei.
Mhm.
It's a really inspiring presentation.
Thanks,
Thank you for the
Joanne, for
opportunity
being
to
brave.
spread the word about public health.
everyone.
Thank you. Be safe, be well.